This episode is sponsored by our friends at Penguin, the proud publishers of Kevin Sinfield's best-selling book, The Extra Mile. This Christmas, Penguin have an incredible selection of books to gift to your loved ones, whatever their interests are. Books do make the perfect stocking fillers. Visit penguin.co.uk to browse their Christmas gift guide. Give a gift that lasts a lifetime with Penguin. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Kevin Sinfield 7 in 7 podcast 2024. Today we woke in Belfast and tonight we're in Glasgow before heading to Hull. We're in perpetual motion, poetry in motion some would call it. Belfast was fabulous, a history tour and a day spent with warm, welcoming people who added tremendous energy to the third of Kevin's 7 ultramarathons. But you wouldn't believe how logistically complicated it is. And here to explain how that works are two of the great plate spinners. Peter Mackreth is Dean of Carnegie School of Sport at the Leeds Beckett University. And Tristan Batley-Kyle is the Operations Director at Run for All. Tristan, I'll start with you. Tell us how you became involved in these challenges and what you do.
Yeah, so we got involved as Run for All through the Rob Borough Leeds Marathon, obviously the inaugural event 2 years ago now, and the guys got in touch and said that they were looking for someone to try and kind of add that communication with councils, with multi-agencies, and kind of bring more of an event feel to the challenges. And so, yeah, that was how I got involved.
But you'd organised marathons, but you'd never done 7 consecutive ultra marathons in different cities on live television with a huge media following and a colossal public interest level. So how big was the jump from doing marathons to doing this?
Yeah, it's just a completely different kettle of fish. You know, I guess what the day job is mass participation, whereas this is kind of it's obviously effectively 3 blokes going for a run, you know, but it's actually in front of a real mass audience, and so there's different challenges to it, and I think it's trying to also bring that kind of vibrancy to the event and or to the challenge and you know to kind of bring it to life to some extent and try and put into action the kind of ideas that Phil comes up with.
Pete, you're a founding member of this, really, a grizzled veteran. Tell us
grizzled.
Tell us about your role.
So I suppose we became involved for the very first one, which was the discussion started pre-COVID, and we were in the process of working with Kev around the notion of him doing 7 marathons in 7 days and actually starting up in Scotland and coming down to the north of England. And for that, Kev wanted some support in terms of route planning and supporting the event. And obviously at Leeds Beckett University, we've had a really strong partnership with Leeds Rhinos, and Kevin also did his undergraduate and his master's degree with us and is an honorary doctorate as well. So we've got really strong links. And so that's kind of how that started. And then obviously in that first year, everything changed because of COVID. And I think whilst the vast majority of people in the world would then go, we can't do this anymore. Kevin obviously decided, no, COVID's not stopping me. You know, and that notion of, you know, wanting to run for a mate, you know, is so ingrained in him that, and if he says he's going to do something, then there's no going back. So we supported him establishing a route around Leeds, but then he obviously used a route that he knew in Saddleworth, so he did 2 in Leeds and 5 in Saddleworth, and at that point he couldn't have done a marathon anywhere else because he could only do a marathon where he lived, which was Saddleworth, and then where he worked. And I think he had special dispensation to do that as well, so that was in Leeds. And so that was really where our involvement started prior to the 101.
Yeah. So at that point, those early days, it was an exploratory attempt to see how much money they could raise, and there was no question of it becoming a national event at that point, was it, on this kind of scale?
I don't think so, but the reality is that that's not really Kevin's drivers, or it's not my interpretation of what Kevin's drivers are. It was about doing something, you know, and doing something, but, you know, he always talks about running Forum 8 with his mates, and that's genuinely what's happening. The fact that it's become a national phenomenon where people are really engaged and connected with the message and the, you know, the story, is kind of almost, it's happened, but that wasn't the driver. And so it's just grown and grown, you know, over the 5 challenges.
Well, one of the things you both have in common is that you rush around in cars under a great deal of stress, just trying to make sure the whole thing works. Now, Tristan, you do an immense amount of research that nobody sees. I think it's 3 months, isn't it? You put into, is that correct? 3 months of. So tell us, go right through it with us. You researched, you know, obviously the route, which is a very complex business in itself, because you've got to look after the runners, but give them a test. You mustn't annoy them too much by sending them up too many hills. You've got to deal with the police.
Does that really well.
Yeah. You've got to deal with the police and local authorities and all the stops to make sure people are geared up for it and expecting them, and all the facilities are organised. How do you get that done in 3 months? It sounds like a 12-month job to me.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few different things we do. You know, it's always really important to get the kind of I guess the base for it, and that usually is an idea of Kevin Phil's, and for me then it's kind of looking at what's already in place. You know, we went down to Brighton last year and there was Brighton Marathon already in place, so why reinvent the wheel to some extent? But then there's also taking the kind of really important and quite kind of poignant places that mean something. You know, so later in the week we'll start from the M&D headquarters as an example. And then you know, it's also trying to piece together things like you know, for this challenge it's having sheltered kind of checkpoints. So trying to find points that are kind of 7 kilometres between each other and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a load of things that you've got to throw into the pot. But ultimately, I guess it's a bit of a puzzle, and you know, what kind of a number of people do in kind of words or in writing, or you know, I guess just for me that's kind of how my brain ticks, and you know, it's the liaison side of it is it usually takes care of itself because of the message and the story and the background of what Kev's doing.
But you seem to be able to think on sort of 10 different levels at once, so that you're thinking 3 steps ahead. You know, I'm talking in the live action when the runs are on. You both seem to have an amazing capacity to think on in all these different places and in all these different ways, and to anticipate and to work out what you need to do next, where you need to be. I mean, how do you do that? Practice?
Yeah. I guess experience, but then it's working together, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, there's points where I don't think of something, Pete will think of it. There's points where Phil will think of it. You know, there's all manner of things, and ultimately we're here for one reason, aren't we? You know, we're here to get Kev round, and you know that sits at the top of it, and we kind of just try and facilitate that from there, and whether that's looking after the cyclists to make sure that they keep him going, or the runners to make sure kind of they're up there with him, you know, or kind of the physios and the doctors to make sure that they're able to do their job. That's ultimately kind of what we're here to do.
Well, there should be a competition, and the winner should be able to spend a day with you two, because they'd learn a lot about logistics. I mean, and these days, Pete, you almost have a kind of.
I'm not sure there'd be many entrants to be fair.
Well, people who want to do this for a living might want to follow you around and learn from you, but you've got you really are at the sharp end, in the sense that, you know, you're responsible for the kind of the general health and safety brief, but again, when the runs are on, you have to protect these guys, don't you? You're right behind them in a vehicle, protecting them against overtaking vehicles, to keep them safe on the road, because they do run on roads and they do put themselves in jeopardy, don't they? And it's your job to stop them getting hurt.
Yeah, and I suppose it comes back to the second challenge that Kev did, which we called the Extra Mile Challenge, because he went 101 miles between Leicester and Leeds. And the conversation I had with Kev at one point was he was going to run from Leicester to Leeds in 24 hours and run 7k every hour, similar to this one, and through the night, etc. So I said to him, well, who's supporting you, or how are you doing it? And I think he would have literally just gone, because that's what he was doing. He would have literally just gone down to Leicester and run up to Leeds, without any support. So we at that point decided, right, well, we need to have a van behind him to provide that protection. And it's not necessarily protection; it's more around awareness and people knowing what's going on, and recognising that they can't just try and pass somebody who's running us, or a couple of cyclists and a couple of runners in the road, without really thinking it through. And having a van behind on certain stretches works. We're not there all of the time. It depends on the road, it depends on what the pavement's like, etc. So we're constantly kind of reviewing that throughout any day. But it's making sure that people are aware, because Kev's running at various times during the day when people are busy, they're going to work, they've got to drop the kids off, they're thinking of 1,001 things, and actually some guy and a couple of his mates being in the street cycling or running when they've not seen the news, or aren't aware of the campaign, because this is all about awareness, and if everybody knew about M&D, we wouldn't need to do it. So it's just trying to make sure that the runners and cyclists are safe, but also other members of the public who are then going about their normal day-to-day business.
Yeah, you've got to look after them as well, of course.
Yeah.
And it strikes me sometimes that people do get agitated, and then when they pull alongside and they go to overtake because they're a bit annoyed and frustrated, when they look to see who it is and they realise who it is and what it's about, they all start tooting their horns and they're glad to see him. The agitation goes when they see, Christ, I've just overtaken Kevin Sinfield.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of the things that we try and make sure as the vehicles that we're driving it's quite clear what we're doing. And so that kind of means that people straight away, they might be a bit annoyed while they're in traffic behind the van, but once they get there they realise, and they're incredibly supportive. And that's also what this is all about, is connecting with people around the country and the M&D community, but also connecting with other people and making sure they understand the challenges that the M&D community face.
Right, well, let's take a short break there for a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Matt Wyman, author of Inside Mercedes F1. A few weeks before the 2023 Formula One season started last year, I found myself presented with a rare opportunity to be embedded with the Mercedes F1 team. Over 18 months, I will be witnessing their efforts to stage a comeback. Netflix's Formula One, Drive to Survive, had made the sport more accessible to fans than ever before. But this was an opportunity to go deeper with one team, not just in the paddock, but also back at base. For just as the racing gets underway in one season, work begins on the design, production and build of the car for the following year. Mercedes F1 were offering me unprecedented access. Inside Mercedes F1 is out now.
Welcome back to episode 4 of the Kevin Sinfield 7 in 7 podcast. Things will go wrong on these runs, Tristan, just every now and again. What's your idea of something going wrong?
I think that's the job. Ultimately, that's what we plan for. We, even in my day job, it's never going to go right, and to some extent, I don't think there's a lot of things that between us and Phil, that phases. There's always ideas flying around of where there's a solution and what we can what we can get through. I guess missing a plane might hamper that.
maybe an aircraft carrier coming up the Mersey and stopping all the Mersey ferries and forcing us onto a metro train.
Possibly,
You probably put it in that category. But simple things like taking a wrong turn, going down a muddy lane by accident, everybody getting filthy. That doesn't improve the mood, does it?
No, and you say that, actually, you know, I think that probably is you know, it's how we work well together as well. You know, if for whatever reason that we can't be at a certain location, these guys can jump in and we can all try and support that. But it's also that awareness of, you know, what those routes look like, and we've done it this week. You know, we've stopped them from going down certain routes just because at that point, you know, the weather's caused that not to be passable, or if it is passable, you know, they're going to get wet feet, and actually that's not really that conducive.
So you're managing the route. You're like in-game management, like a very good football manager, making your changes as you go along sometimes. Yeah?
Ish.
Tweaks.
I think it's a live project for 7 days, 24 hours a day. So it's not just about when Kev's running, and so the reality is it's not just about me and Tristan. I mean, Tristan's already mentioned Phil, and Phil is really the organizer of everything, and you know, Phil is the leader of the project.
He's
in
the
many
godfather,
ways. Exactly.
The architect.
But at the same time, you know, I think every single person as part of this team has one thing in mind, which is about supporting Kev to complete the challenge, and you know, raising awareness, raising funds for M&D, and you know, building on Rob's legacy. And so it's everybody then pitches in where they need to, you know, and so, you know, everybody knows that, you know, somebody's going to be there to support them if there's a need, because invariably when it's a 24/7, you know, project, things will go wrong because you can't predict everything.
You're so popular that people throw money at you as they're going past, don't you? And didn't somebody try to throw money at you while they were overtaking you?
Yeah, we've had lots of examples of that where, I mean, you know, as you're driving in the van behind Kevin, obviously, people are out on the streets and want to donate. So people will bring, bring money to the van, and so we'll collect that. But there's been times where people have been driving along the wrong side of the road to overtake the van, and I'm hoping that they overtake the van as quickly as possible, obviously. And on one occasion somebody was driving, they were the only person in the car, so they rolled down the passenger window and had one hand on the steering wheel, reaching across through their passenger side window to pass me a £20 note. And obviously at that point I told them to donate online and get out of the way of the oncoming traffic that was coming. But yeah, I think it goes to show some of the examples that we've got, you know, how important it is to people and how they connect with that message so strongly, that sometimes they'll do silly things like that, which we obviously then need to manage.
Yeah, I guess it's quite a privilege when you think about it to make those long journeys, and along every inch of the way you're seeing the goodwill, the love, the support, you know, the feeling for Kevin and this charity, this cause, this MND cause. So by the end of the week, I'm sure you're exhausted, but you're probably also exhilarated that there's so much, you know, goodness out there.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's a privilege to be part of the challenge, but it's through that it's a privilege to meet the people that we do meet, and see the impact that M&D has on the people with M&D, but also the people around them, and their families and their community, and to hear the stories that they tell, and to see that they might not tell you their story, but just to see the connection and their face when they see Kev, when they hand over money. It's incredibly special moments.
Finally, I wonder if I were doing either of your jobs, I'd still be awake at 4 o'clock in the morning because I wouldn't be able to calm down. you obviously do calm down. You've mastered the art of actually getting to sleep and switching off. But is it difficult to switch your brain off and for just for 6 hours a night?
Go on, Tristan.
A pint of Guinness might help, I suppose.
I'd say during the week, no, it's quite easy. In the probably couple of weeks beforehand, yeah, it's quite tough.
Right, so it's the anticipation that gets to you, not the
Yeah, I think
week
so.
itself. Yeah.
I think just because it's my day job, I probably trust in what I can do to some extent, but up to that point, there's a lot of kind of things to get in order and trying to make sure that certain things are arranged and that things are as I'll give you a great example. Sending a route across to Kev for him to tell me that that's a significantly steep hill and I might want to take that one out. Things like that. If I hadn't, you get to the day and you kind of deal with it, but actually thinking beforehand, oh God, I hope the route's going to be okay type thing. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. There's something eerie about this whole challenge. There certainly was today because Jimmy and Joe is recording this episode, went to McDonald's for a coffee and the bill came to £7.77. And Kev was passed by a bus today and the number of the bus was 777. So, it's written in the stars, isn't it? Yeah, thanks for joining us. Another episode from Hull, and we'll keep them rolling until everybody runs home for Christmas on Saturday. All the very best.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by our friends at Penguin, the proud publishers of Kevin Sinfield's best-selling book, The Extra Mile. This Christmas, Penguin have an incredible selection of books to gift to your loved ones, whatever their interests are. Books do make the perfect stocking fillers. Visit penguin.co.uk to browse their Christmas gift guide. Give a gift that lasts a lifetime with Penguin. Thank you very much.